Welcome to another round of Ray's Boom Boom Room. I'm your host, Ray Mancini, here with my ace cornerman, man, Mike Case.
I'm pumped. I'm so pumped right now.
Yeah, I'm excited about this show. This is, I'm so excited. This is one of my favorite shows. Going to be one of my favorite shows. I'm not going to waste too much. We have a special guest online. I'm going to get to his accolades and accomplishments right now because I only got him for a period of time, and I want to get the most out of him. Not only have I become good friends with this young man, and I got a chance to work with him, and you don't get no better than work with this gentleman who's taught me a lot and been. I learned just watching him, listening to him when we do our broadcast on Fox and Fox Sports 1. But let me give you his bio here. Christopher Patrick Myers. How about that? Christopher Patrick. Christopher was born on March 28th. I won't give you, Chris, I'm March 4th, but my son's the 26th, so you are Aquarius, right? Aquarius, I think.
No, I follow the Aries.
Aries, yeah, it was one.
Yeah.
I believe it began with an A. I knew it was one of the ones that began with an A. How's that?
I've been called an A for different reasons.
Yeah, but our Chris Myers was born and raised in Miami, Florida, and actually Miami Beach. He went to Chaminade High School in Hollywood, Florida, which is down the street from Miami Beach. And but he spent more than 30 years. He's been in the business for more than 30 years, broadcasting. But he's covered such world-class events as the World Series, the Super Bowl, the NBA Finals, NCAA Final Four, the Masters, the U.S. Open for golf tournaments, Olympics, and the Daytona 500. I mean, he's done it all. And he's been for Fox Sports since 1998. But before that, he had a hell of a career at ESPN. He was at 10 years at ESPN, hosting a Sports Center, Baseball Tonight, and other shows. First, I call Chris. I'm going to call Chris the the Forrest Gump of commentators and announcers, because if you read his bio, he was at every important event in through sports history sports.
You're at least a 3-hour movie.
But
that's for sure.
But Chris was the first. Now this is his accomplishments, and this is something we're going to get into. First was the first to conduct an interview with O.J. Simpson after the murder trial. That's what we want to talk about. He also he earned acclaim for his live reporting during the San Francisco earthquake during the 1989 World Series. Mm-hmm. He was the only one to stay on scene and report through the night. The only reporter to stay on site and report through the night. So, and he also was unbelievable. Was during the Atlanta Olympics of 1996 during the bombing.
Centennial Park.
Atlanta Olympics. He broke into broadcasting as this fascinates me. He was 16 years old. He was 16 years old, high school student, when he started his own radio show at Miami's WKAT, and he interviewed Muhammad Ali down in Miami Beach.
And Don Shula.
And also Don Shula, yes. He's interviewed many accomplished sports figures and other people throughout, obviously not just sports figures, but notable personalities. But that I found it interesting that he interviewed Ali at 16 years old, and we're going to talk about that. And was
that a real radio station, Chris, or was it like the school radio station, or how'd you get Muhammad Ali?
Well, am I going to get?
What, you want more to say about
finally say for the one and only? I'm going to give it up. I'm trying to build this up.
I think you have.
This up.
Poor Chris is going to sleep.
With no further ado,
my
friend.
The show's almost over.
I know. Thanks a lot, Chris.
I'm exhausted just reading your bio, but. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, a mentor to me, and when we're denouncing, he's the best. He spreads the love. I had more fun with this guy. I'm gonna miss him because now he's going off to the football. For football.
He's got the NFL to do.
NFL, and I'm gonna miss him until next year. So, but for no further ado, my dear friend Chris Myers. Chris, thank you so much for spending some time with us on Ray's Boom Boom Room. Woo.
No, it's good to be out with you guys. Yes,
Thank you.
no, I know there's a lot there. And Ray, and I've enjoyed working with you. Obviously admired. My brother was a big fight fan. Got me into boxing as a youngster and watched you and liked the style that you fought with. You go with the same passion in the broadcasting part of it. We have a good time. If people could only hear what we say and do off the camera, then they'd really be entertained. That'll be another show down the road. But anyway, it's good to be out with you guys.
Thank you. So I know my guy Mike here. Mike Case has got so many questions for someone. Let Mike go ahead.
Well, that's true. Well, let's start there. Was that a high school radio station or an FM or an AM and how did you pull the Ali thing? How'd you get him on with you?
Yeah, it was a legitimate 5,000 watt cat with a K, WKAT, one of the earliest talk radio stations, and it was in Miami Beach. Arthur Godfrey used to do a showdown, and that's how far back Larry King did a show back through these are the people way before me in radio and broadcasting, but the station was established and they did a lot of news and sports talk. And I got the job calling in as a teenager when I was supposed to be doing my homework. I'd call in and be Chris from Miami and talk about sports. You're supposed to only call once a night, but I'd call back and disguise my voice as Duke from North Miami, and I would agree with my earlier call. They didn't have caller ID back then, so I could get away with it, so I could get on the radio more and talk more sports. And that's how I kind of got invited down for fan night, got a part-time job on weekends. My father had to drive me down there. I didn't have my driver's license yet at the time, but I was sent out by our sports director then, and I had the tape recorder after I got out of algebra class to go down to the Fountain Blue Hotel in Miami Beach and interview this boxer who was entertaining and talking to everybody. And so this is 70, and it was Muhammad Ali who teased me in front of everybody. I had long hair. He said, "You're not as dumb as you look, kid, and go back to school," or something like that. It was very funny, but he was very engaging and entertaining. And then from there, I got my own show on the weekends, and Don Shula covering the Dolphins, and through their heyday, it just developed from there. TV, radio. Little did I know we'd have the kind of sports networks and choices that we have today in the business.
Chris, I mean, it's funny because them 70s Dolphins are one of my favorite teams to watch. You were there during their heyday, as you said. Tell us about those years. I mean, that'd be interesting. Obviously, when they went to undefeated, what was it? 72 a team was undefeated, and still the only undefeated. That's why when people talk about the best teams of all time, I know the Bears had a great defense. The Ravens, there's been some. The Patriots have had a good run, but with dynasty. But when you talk about the best team in the history of pro football, from or at least the Super Bowl era, from beginning to end, the Dolphins would be the only choice because they were the only ones who had the perfect regular season, and then through the postseason. The Patriots did that, but remember they lost in the Super Bowl to the Giants, a game I was at. I had to cover for Fox. I had the Patriots sideline, and Bill Belichick was difficult after that defeat. But that's why the Dolphins are. That's the only team that has been perfect through the Super Bowl era and then won the Super Bowl. A lot of people would argue that, and what the argument is. I agree with you. I love that was my team. The argument is now that it was only 14 games. Now the 16 game season and plus how many more playoff games. But you're right. You can't talk about what ain't. I always say you can't talk what ain't.
Right.
You got to talk what is. So
that's right. And they did it.
And, correct me if I'm wrong, they also had 2,000-yard rushers, Mercury Morris and Larry Zonka that year?
So they had
and Jim Kick.
The no-name defense was, they had Jim Kick was terrific. Mercury Morris was the return. Bob Greasy, who was the first known pro football player to wear glasses on the field, a Hall of Fame quarterback. I remember he got hurt in that perfect season. And a guy named Earl Morrall, the old crew cut, had to lead that team. And they ended up, they were underdogs in that Super Bowl against the Redskins, and ended up winning. It was the Gary Premium crazy kicking play that he lost the ball, but. That was the no-name defense, to the epitome, really, of good teamwork, and that's why today I still think in all sports, with football, with 11 guys out there, even if you're overmatched in talent, if you're 11 or cohesive and well coached, maybe you can't live on it, but you can win games against better talent because of that. It's not necessarily a one-on-one matchup.
Were you kind of rooting against the Patriots then in that Super Bowl? You can be honest.
No, not really. I've covered a few Super Bowls for Fox. I was on the Patriots sideline when they came back in the only overtime Super Bowl and beat the Atlanta Falcons, if you recall, in that one. So, I really, but I do, look, I wanted somebody to go, it'd be nice to see a modern team have the perfection and finish the the kind of regular season schedule we have, and then the Super Bowl run. So I wasn't necessarily rooting, but yeah, there'll always be a soft spot in my heart for that perfect Dolphins team, and it is amazing. Someday somebody might do it, but I'm surprised that we haven't seen it yet.
Chris, of course, just recently when the captain, that no-name Nick Bonaconte, just passed away, and that era, that the era is gone, man. That little guys of that era, they're slowly leaving us, And Nick Bonaconte is a wonderful man. He was a wonderful man, Nick Bonaconte.
Yeah, and became a terrific broadcaster with Len Dawson for so many years. They did Inside the NFL on HBO. He's a very nice, family man. But yeah, the era of and look, the way we're into the offensive numbers because of the defensive rules allowing more scoring. And just and for safety reasons. I mean, the NFL had to adjust with concussions and other injuries. So the tackling, the kinds of hits you could put on people, it's changed a lot of the game. I mean, there's still a right way to do it, and I understand why the NFL had to do it. But yes, the game has changed. That's where Deacon Jones back in the day could maul a quarterback and get away with it. Now they throw a flag, but your quarterbacks last longer and are healthier when they step away from the game.
But Deacon's the greatest defensive player ever. You know how I know that?
I do.
He told me so.
Yeah, and so did Merlin Olsen. Merlin Olsen said the same thing.
But Deacon, I was friends with Deacon. Deacon would let you know. But I'd say, Deke, who's the hardest guy for you? You always ask, who's the hardest guy, who to play against? And, who was the hardest fighter for me to fight? Who's the hardest fighter for you? Who's the hardest player for you to play against? He said, I can't answer that, Boom. That's what he said. I was never one-on-one. Always double and triple teamed, which was true. Was true. Yep. But I love
the term sack. Came from Deacon Jones.
Sure. And look, Chris, you know as well as I do in the game nowadays. I'm all for the safety. Don't get me wrong. But you can't breathe heavy on these quarterbacks anymore without getting a penalty on you. And it's just
and they're adjusting, right? I mean, they're teaching Mike. They're how to attack. You can't lead with the helmet. You've got to stay away from diving at the knees. I mean, these are things that were all accepted back in the Jack Tatum era or in those eras of the past. And it's just you can't. You guys weren't lasting physically, so it's changed the game. It's a little more of a finesse game, but it's still a very physical game if it's done right, taught right, and coaches have adjusted.
Everybody's bigger and stronger and faster, so it is more.
Yes, that's the other part of it.
Hey, on that same vein, what'd you make of the Andrew Luck thing?
Well, I did one of his games last year, Mike, and I got the impression I was a big fan of his in terms of the kind of guy he and quarterback that he is playing. And I got the impression last year, we sit in meetings before that he was really dealing with an air of uncertainty still about, he'd gone through the shoulder, he had a kidney injury, and for a guy that is so young, it's like I'm doing my best, and he wasn't complaining. He was just being realistic about it. You could see in the back of his mind. So I guess I was surprised that it happened when it happened, but I don't fault the guy, and it's his life and his career. He married his childhood sweetheart. They're expecting their first child. I mean, he's got all the money, and I think he gave it his best shot. And it really, it disturbs me that people are calling him out, and I've been to Colts games in Indianapolis. I just think that's a small core of fans overreacting, booing, that people would get on his case. I mean, you live your life, let him live his, and make his call. And the guy's an architectural degree from Stanford. He graduated early. I mean, there's a lot going for him in his life. And if physically he sees, like guys who can't, walk after they finish playing, some of them because of knee injuries and things like that, I certainly understand. I mean, I'm going to miss him. I'd love to watch him play.
Yeah.
He didn't leave the team hanging. They had Jacoby Brissett working in the background. So he did the best he could with it. I think we should accept that, admire him, and applaud him for the time that he put into the NFL.
I heard about him when he was in college. My son said to me, he said, Pop, this guy's the Knicks. He's the future of football. He said he's a college. A lot of college quarterbacks don't pan out. He said, no, Pop, this kid's the future of football. And
he worked at it.
Oh, he was something, man. And he was. I didn't realize the stats. I didn't realize he only missed,
Hall of Fame
career
stats
on
the way
from the touchdowns thrown over there.
That's right.
Last 7 years.
I feel like though the fans, maybe I don't know how much they're booing him or the fact that they know that they're going to be bad now for about 3 years, and nobody really saw it coming.
Well, they've had,
and the timing of it was just so bad,
Yeah, I mean, Mike, he gave it his best shot. Had he known this, he would have told him before. Maybe they could have drafted somebody.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think they went from a Super Bowl contender to just a team that's contending to get into the playoffs. Frank Reich, they're very well coached, so they'll still be in the mix. Yeah, I think the fan reaction was just one of anger and upset. They're going to miss the guy. They're worried about their team, that type of thing. But, he said he heard it personally. I mean, those things are just not necessary. The guy's already, it's an emotional, difficult decision.
Right.
And he can't play the game that at the level that he's played at. And he just doesn't want to, also lower his standards for his team, let them move on and move forward. So it does. It affects the entire dynamic of the NFL today. Think about Tom Brady, who's outlasted not only Peyton Manning, but outlasted Peyton Manning's replacement. And he's, in his 40s sailing along with Super Bowl. So it just tells you about how good he is. But, yes, it does shake things up in terms of the Colts going from a team that could have been in the Super Bowl. Had a good run last year. But, yeah, and his numbers were outstanding. He was on his way to a Hall of Fame career had he been able to play longer. We're gonna miss Andrew Luck.
Yeah, Chris, it's funny you just mentioned my argument. You just mentioned Tom Brady. Great player, one of the greatest quarterbacks, but they call him the greatest because he's won 5 Super Bowls or 6 Super, whatever it is. I'm saying, you can, if you're going to go individual, if you're going to talk about player the greatest, you got to go by stats. He ain't there, but he's got great stats.
Right.
But he's not. But people forget, if it ain't for the guy picked off to play that stupid play at the goal line, you don't give it to Marshall Lynch to run in, and he was bold. They lose that Super Bowl. They use, so I mean, and if the Falcons don't fold like a deck of cards, they lose that Super Bowl. So I mean, come on, man. I mean, I'm not. Tom Brady is great. Don't get me wrong, but when you're talking about a team sport, you can't talk about he's the greatest player. No. He's not. Is he the greatest quarterback? No, he's not.
Well, who's better?
Better quarterback?
Yeah.
Peyton Manning was a better quarterback, and you can go by stats.
Yeah, I would.
And if you're going to go at the end of it,
right, I would agree.
Aaron Rodgers will be better. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, certainly
Drew Brees.
Dan Marino, who never won
Right.
a Super Bowl, but I would. Yeah, so he's one of the greatest. But I agree with you in that I wouldn't call him, if you're using a Super Bowl title as a measuring stick. Well, yes, he's won the most of it. I watched. Joe Montana and John Elway, these guys were, and Brett Favre, to me, in terms of pure passers. But, give Brady his due for the longevity and the kind of success in this Patriot dynasty. But I wouldn't call him the greatest quarterback of all time. I'd put him in that group, but I wouldn't single him out ahead of everybody else.
And Chris, he plays in a system that works for him. If you took him out of that system, look, when the 49ers traded Joe Montana worked in a system. That West Coast offense with Bill Walsh created, it was spectacular. Joe Montana is one of my favorite players of all time, don't get me wrong. But when they moved him to Kansas City, he didn't get him to the Super Bowl. And Steve Young won the Super Bowl with him because of the system. Tom Brady plays in a system. If you move him out and get somebody else, if Jimmy G would have got the shot, maybe he would have taken him to a Super Bowl. Who knows?
Yeah, but I don't think you should fault Brady.
No, I don't.
He's made the most of that system.
Yes,
and he's also been physically delivered, worked at it over a certain amount of time. And there's another guy who certainly could step away at any point that he wants to.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the whole argument about great. And then there's that era of quarterbacks way before the Super Bowl era.
Yeah.
How do you measure? You just go by
Johnny
stats?
U, baby. Johnny U.
I mean. Look at the passing numbers of Terry Bradshaw and Joe Namath, who were in the Hall of Fame. Even Bob Greasy, who I mentioned, and they were great for their teams at their time. But the rules didn't allow. You didn't have the kind of defensive pass interference rules, so they didn't put up the kind of passing numbers that guys today are putting up. And if you just use Super Bowls, I mean, there were guys, Trent Dilfer, Brad Johnson. These guys won Super Bowls. They're not Hall of Fame quarterbacks. So yeah, I think we have to take all of those factors into consideration when you're talking about the best quarterback of all time. You're talking about the best quarterback right now, who I'd take to win a game. I still think I'd take up the current guys playing. Aaron Rodgers would be my guy, based on at least the guys that I've been around. And there's a lot of good ones to choose from.
Well, Chris, there's so much stuff we want to talk about, and I don't want to keep. Here's the one thing I want to cut to this. How did you? Okay, tell us about the OJ. When you interviewed OJ after the trial, how did that come about? Tell me again.
Yeah. For clarification, this was the first live interview after both the wrongful death lawsuit and then the criminal trial, which he was guilty on the wrongful death lawsuit. Right. Obviously, was acquitted on the double murder trial, and he had been someone who'd watched. I was doing the up close interview show that Roy Firestone did for years. I was doing that in Los Angeles back at the time for ESPN. He wanted to come on the show before all of this happened. Obviously, the allege his involvement and then the trial. So we stayed on it, trying to get him to come on, and he said, I'll come on afterwards. And he said, but I have my one request is I want to do it live because I've watched you're fair to people. You interview coaches, athletes. I said, we'll do it live. I said, okay, that's fair. Because Barbara Walters had the interview, but she wanted to only tape it so she could edit things, and OJ didn't want that. Simpson said, because I think they could turn things around, I want to be able to talk live. So we did it. I had some people didn't want me to do it. Some people threatened me because I was putting as a alleged killer on the air. I mean, there was that, but I had to do it. It was an opportunity, and it was we ended up expanding the show. And he was in total denial. There was no question in my mind in terms of talking to him and also preparing. I prepared like a lawyer for this. I saw court documents, and I talked to Petrocelli, the lawyer who won the wrongful death suit. I talked to the detectives, Vincent Bugliosi, the attorney who put Manson away, the prosecutor. I talked to him. He gave me advice on how to handle a guy like this who believes his own lies, kind of thing, so that you're not made to look bad as if it was in a courtroom. Because I studied a little legal stuff when I was in college and doing sports, but nothing like this. So, but in essence, overall, there was just no question in my mind that I wanted to be fair. I wasn't going to be a prosecuting attorney. I was an interviewer, but I wanted to ask the questions that people wanted to know. And the most telling one I asked was, are you capable of killing? And he said, yes, you are. But then, of course, he said everybody's capable of killing. But he was in total denial. I mean, the sidebar to this, we were live. We hit our first commercial break after we're talking on national TV about his wife being murdered and beaten and that type of thing. And he turns to me in a break and says, hey, I got a tee time out at Riviera. Next week, we need a fourth. You want to play some golf? And I was like stunned that this guy would go that route. And he's the only guest who I never shook his hand at the end of the broadcast. And that's it. I think at the end he said, if you watch, you can watch it on YouTube. But he just said, hey, it was great talking sports with you. It was a sarcastic remark because we went 50 minutes or whatever and stayed obviously on the case and covered those questions, which he knew I was going to do. But it was a fascinating interview, and it's funny how karma caught up with him anyway, and now I guess he's on Twitter looking for the real killers or whatever the heck he's doing. I don't know, but it was a very unusual experience in my in my all the people I've interviewed in sportscasting over the years, from Ali to Tyson, from Brady to Elway to Montana, from Derek Jeter to whatever Barry Bonds. This was one of those unusual things, and I'm glad we were able to do it because I think people could judge for themselves afterwards how they felt about the guy.
Well, what kind of feeling did you get while you were talking with him, and why didn't you shake his hand at the end?
Well, because I thought he got away with murder. That was my opinion.
Before you went in, or during it, or after it?
Well, in studying for the preparation for the interview, I mean, I really did. I only had a few weeks, and I saw what the jury saw. I don't know how they missed this, and I saw things some photos and more evidence, and I talked to people that. I mean, it got so bad at the house. I'd be having dinner, and they'd say, "Pass the salt." And I'd say, "I object." Sustained. And I thought I was a lawyer for like 2 weeks. But I didn't want to come on the air and be over the top and yell at him and scold him, "You're guilty, you're guilty." I just wanted to ask the questions and let people and be able to follow up on the questions. And I think he really believed his own lie. I mean, I think there could be some. And I'm not a doctor either, but that was one of the things that was more. He told himself whatever he had to do, and maybe he had some help on the case. That part I saw some openings where someone could have helped him. But I didn't see any possible way that anyone else could have done it or been involved other than him, in that direct charge.
Well, first of all, because remember, there was people that then they couldn't, because it was early on and they talked to the press that they couldn't put him on the stand, who said they actually saw him speeding away on San Vicente Boulevard. He crossed over Bundy, crossed through the light, sped up San Vicente towards, Rockingham. So
yeah.
I mean, during that time, there's so much stuff. Look, all I remember is this: they said, it was 1 in a billion or 7 billion or whatever billion, and whatever the odds were, there wasn't even that many people on Earth that it could be.
Yeah.
So
no. Well, you could always. I mean, look, it's the prosecution's job to prove that he's guilty. But the irony here's another irony too. Okay, remember, there's one thing in there where he had cuts on his hand from the knives, but he said he broke a glass or whatever. So I finished this interview. I'm playing touch football out here in L.A. I run over a sprinkler head. I blow out my knee, ACL. So I go to have surgery at the Curlin Job Clinic, knee surgery in Los Angeles. I'm going back for a follow-up. This is about a year later after this interview, maybe. And I get in the elevator, and who gets in?
Okay.
Just him and I. And it's O.J. Simpson. I'm not making this up. And I said, I kind of looked down, and he said, yeah, hey. I said, yeah, hey. And then he said, he goes, I got this little thing on my hand I got to get taken care of that I've had for a few years. He points to this gash in between his thumb. I mean, yeah, it was unbelievable. So then he gets off on a different floor, and I'm just like, did that just really just happen? It was one of those amazing things. Anyway,
So
I hope people, and if you watch it, if you go back and watch it, remember it was back at that time, so it was a couple of years after. You can watch then, based on what we knew then. Now, a lot's come out afterwards, but I think most people would watch that and just say, well, he couldn't answer. And, Mike, that was the thing. He didn't have any real, I said, produce a check. Did you write, show me something that you asked somebody to go find the real killers. He couldn't do any of that. And the reported domestic violence, we had pictures and reports of that before that we, he didn't have, I lost my temper. It doesn't mean he killed her, but okay. Right. So he just was very kind of, excuses and believing his own lies. That's kind of that was my interpretation of it.
Well, now let's move on to another one. Forrest. Now, you were at the '89 during the World Series. The '89 World Series.
Yeah,
you were there during the earthquake. I remember watching it. I remember watching it. And everything was shaking. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, ABC was doing the actual game, but I was there with ESPN. Chris Berman and Bob Lee. We were in the auxiliary press area at Candlestick Park up in the stands, and it was my first year there at ESPN as a reporter for the teams with the A's and the Giants. And yeah, we first thought like a plane had hit or something had hit the stadium the way it felt, and there were two different reactions. You could almost see the field. I mean, it didn't really ripple, but it felt like the visual of that, and players scattered. And at the time, you didn't realize how severe the damage was. And ABC was able, and Al Michaels, to stay on the air to at least through that, because they were using the satellite and the production crew from ESPN. But then we reported on SportsCenter, and I remember the aftermath, learning of some of the horrid tragedy and lost lives. And then so there was that to report on. And then we had then at some point you worry about, okay, when are we going to play the World Series again? But all the players and their wives were okay, and the commissioner had some tough decisions to make on how long to delay that World Series. But it was a very unusual experience. And then the Olympic bombing when I was taping late at night for SportsCenter in the '96 games, and that bomb going off. That's where we stayed on through the night, on the air reporting there. We thought there were more bombs, and the National Guard came in. It was a very unusual and limited, really, with one cameraman kind of wandering around and finding out later that it wasn't as severe as it could have been, because this wasn't too far removed from a terrorist plane act, and we didn't know if there was more, if there were terrorists, or if that was the reason. But yeah, that's when sports becomes, you're there for the games and the interviews with athletes, but then something more important happens, and you're worried about lives and breaking news, and you just cover it as best as that you can.
Yeah.
Did you feel like that era of ESPN, that stretch you were at, was their heyday, like a lot of people do, and do you miss it at all?
Yeah, well, I'll always be grateful for ESPN. I had some great times in the early years. Yes, through the '90s, I call it the golden years. I mean, that's when ESPN was likable, popular. It was the go-to for sports. It was the up-and-comer, and then it was the standard. And you had to fight to get the rights on for football and baseball, and a lot of fine people behind the scenes and in front of the camera. And then they started to expand channels and became big. And look, it's still, it's still what it is. But yeah, it's time to move on and grow up and do other things. And but that, yeah, I would say that was the heyday. That was the run of Chris Berman's nicknames and Bob Lee covering the news. And people wanting to do, to hum the da-da-da, because it was just such a cool thing. I mean, now there's a lot. You have regional channels, you have sports, you have entire NFL and MLB networks that provide a lot of the things that cut into what they were giving, what ESPN was giving at the time, where you didn't have any other choice but to go there. Now there are too many. And, of course, Fox Sports and FS1, which has a lot of live, and not just live sports programming, but big events, the Super Bowl, the World Series, the World Cup. the U.S. Open, the Daytona 500. And those are the things that we find in today's sports world in terms of television, live TV versus tape programming. And Netflix and Amazon have taken the tape part over the entertainment side. Live sports is really where the biggest audiences are for television today.
Yeah, still are. They still are. You're right. And this is why having the fights on Fox. We said it when it first came out that I always said boxing will never have the same popularity without network television. Now we do, and that's the only way you're going to make stars of these fighters. So people will know. They'll know the faces along with the names, because a lot of times they say,
and I'm still,
I know the face. I just don't know the name.
Yeah, and Ray and Mike, look, boxing went through, and I grew up in the Duran Leonard, and Hearns, Hagler, Mancini, and Ali Frazier. There was a dip there where you need people to have guys to root for or against. Ali, some people didn't like him; he was the greatest, whatever. Other people thought he was breakthrough, and certainly his skill spoke for itself. So we have guys in the heavyweight division, Deontay Wilder. You've got Ruiz. Sorry, the Spence fight coming up September 28th. You have pay-per-view Pacquiao. I still think we're going to see a Pacquiao-Mayweather bout. Maybe I'm just dreaming, but I think there's something there down the road. But yes, people want to know who the fighters are. They want to have somebody to root for or against. And television, whether it's Fox with BBC or some of the other channels and the pay-per-view events, have to keep that up so that boxing can, I think, reestablish the kind of popularity we had back in. Remember the closed circuit days?
Yeah,
TV.
Of course, I remember very well.
That was brought in big money for some nights.
Is there? You've done. I mean, all the dog shows and all these different sports. Is there a sport that you really had to prepare for? And then, what's your favorite event to do?
That's a really good question. I did the West play-by-play for the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show, which is the longest-running sporting event or competition other than the Kentucky Derby.
Right.
And I had to prepare for that. I've always loved dogs. I've been around them, but there are over 300 breeds, and of course the rules. So that was I look, when you're in the business long enough, you love different. I did a dart competition, which was fascinating in Las Vegas with some international stars. I didn't know these people start drinking at noon, throwing darts. I mean, that sounded like fun, but I still had to prepare. So, I would say, a polo match would be interesting, which I don't know a lot about. I think to try to call one if somebody would want to put that on television. But, I'm a football guy at heart. I think that's where I grew up. It doesn't mean I don't, and I do. I like all other sports. But football, baseball were the first two loves in my life as a kid, collecting cards, watching.
Right.
I'm very much a television guy. In fact, I grew up, watching, as much as I watched sports, I used to watch interview shows, whether it was the late night shows or the afternoon shows or whatever. So you blend those two together, and that's kind of what I enjoy about this business, that you can hang out with ex-athletes or guys like Ray or you Frank Thomas, or if I'm doing a football game, Troy Aikman or whatever, or you can call the games and meet the athletes and talk to the coaches and players, that personal side, along with the one-loss column. Is what makes it so much fun. But yeah, I'm always looking for the next. Maybe there's something out there
They got some crazy stuff in the Olympics now.
God.
Yeah, that's right. Now that's true. I've covered the Olympics, but didn't broadcast the actual games. So that's something maybe down the road. But I think the Olympics. I think the Olympics have changed a little too in the way that we've become such a global. Connected world, and I don't know that used to be a way you'd only see other countries performing and competing, and now we have such a wide range of things. I think that's lost a little bit of its luster in terms of what it used to be. At least from a viewing standpoint, not in terms of representing your country and winning a medal. But the Olympics that would be a special event to be a part of.
Oh man, yeah, Chris, that on and on and on. That's just I don't know what else to say. I don't know what to say.
I have a million questions.
Can
you come back, please?
I don't want. Go ahead. Chris.
I know you got to go, but would you come back sometime?
No, Mike, I got it. No, if you have absolutely.
We got
a few more questions.
Okay. Did you grow up?
Let's roll.
Well, you'll let me know. Shekels will let me know.
All right. Did you grow up playing sports?
well, first of all,
it's a good question.
Well, first of all, one of the funniest guys I ever met, Chris. Funny and very cerebral. When he has his one-liners, nobody got better one-liners coming back.
I know.
I thought I had pretty good ones. No, not compared to Chris. He's the best. You're the
Well, no,
best.
I always joke that I joke that Ray and I will be at the the Chuckle Hut in Cincinnati on a Tuesday night.
That's funny.
Opening for Carrot Top or something. But no, we have I did a little bit of comedy through college and working in TV and radio and that type of thing. So it was always kind of a fascination of mine watching comics because of the way they interact with people. But as far as and I did a lot of that in school. Mike, back to your question. I did the PA announcing, for the updates in the class, and I took speech and all that, and a little bit of drama. But I played. I was a backup quarterback in high school, a little bit of hoops when I was younger. But no, not really a good athlete. I love being outdoors and I love being athletic and activity, but I never really had the kind of skill set, which is another reason I always admire. Win, lose. I never criticize athletes for when they've given their all and they tried their best. I mean, I really appreciate what guys or girls what they do when they're out there performing. So it's given me a good perspective. I'm not a frustrated athlete. I always admired them. I never really wanted to be a star athlete like some guys dream of being a quarterback. Or that wasn't my thing. I always dreamt of calling the game with a quarterback or the guy hit the home run, and that eventually came through. The truth is, my father. Ray, I know you're very proud with your father. We all have influences in our life. My dad, I came from a big family, one of 5 children. My dad had to work 2 jobs. He was a World War II veteran, but he always, when I was growing up, he emphasized to me to read the newspaper, be up on the news and current events. And it's almost like he wasn't anti-sports, but he didn't have time for sports, and he thought, I should worry about more important things. And so I kind of flipped the other way, and then later, obviously, when I made a career out of this, I would call him and say, hey, what do you think of the election coming up? And he'd say, never mind that. How about those Dodgers? So he became a sports fan when he was retired before he passed away. So I think if you put all your experiences together as you grow older, I think it helps you to stay well-rounded.
Yeah, Chris, it's funny you said that about. Not jealous of any, but like I said, I'm a lover of fighters. I'm a lover of athletes in general. So that's why when I talk about fighters, people or athletes, when I say like Tom Brady, I love Tom Brady as an athlete. I don't even know him I never met him, but I'm just saying. But when you say that's why I give that piece of he's the greatest. Well, I'm not saying he's done great. He's accomplished great things. He may go down as one of the greats of all time, but to say one guy's the greater, depending on the eras. The team, the system, all that stuff. When you have a team sport, it's very, very difficult for me to say one guy's the greatest. That's all I'm saying. And
yes.
I argue my kids all the time about Michael Jordan. MJ's the greatest. I said if he came into the middle against Wilt would have had his fist down Michael Jordan's throat. You come by one time,
and there were guys
twice. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think we can, but that's what's fun about sports. We usually don't. You don't hear people sitting around arguing about the greatest general of all time for the greatest president. But in sports, we really like, and it is tougher in a team sport. You're right, as opposed to talking about the greatest golfer. It's ridiculous. There you can look at if you're going to use, the Grand Slam events as an accomplishment or not. But I do think eras, and even like questioning Muhammad Ali, who called himself the greatest, you could argue for other fighters. Right. So that's what's good about what we do and about how time goes on. And there's always somebody who's a current greatest, and we always like to compare or discuss, the last greatest or the one who thinks he's the greatest of all time. I think that's part of the joy of sports.
Well, that's it. When you talk about players being the greatest, look, being a team sport, MJ, if John Paxton don't knock it down, and if what's the other teammate? Steve Kerr don't knock it down. He went at 6. He got 4, and he lost. He's 4-2. Come on, man. Anyhow.
All right. Well, you're I can't believe Ray is tearing down Brady and Jordan.
No,
I know.
Don't say that. I'm a lover of those guys. I'm a lover of those guys.
I know.
But I know you know what I'm saying. That's why in team sports they say one guy's the
no,
great.
and I think I think it's fair to compare eras, and you could. I'd say instead of the greatest, they say who's your favorite? Who's your favorite girl?
Right.
I did. I was a big Wilt Chamberlain guy.
Well,
going back, Jerry West was one of the early.
Man.
So Magic Johnson more recently. So there's eras, quarterbacks too. Like I told you, Brett Favre was one of my. Now that I've been in the business and interviewing, but I have 2 ways of looking how a guy is on a field and what he's like to talk to. So it's a little bit of a different point of view, but that makes sports a lot of fun.
It
is.
And look, you're very fortunate. You've had a hell of a career. You've paid your dues I tell people, it's success. There's so many definitions of success. One of my favorites, and it's the one I like to use, is it's when preparation meets opportunity. That's success.
It makes sense.
Yes, and that you're happy at what you're doing. And I'm big on, and Mike, we're talking whatever the longevity. To be in a business that you enjoy for a lot of years, and to be around the people, you should be grateful for that. And that's why I think it's tough sometimes for athletes who are playing since age 5, right? Then they got to retire at some point, but then at least they can be in broadcasting, they can write about it, talk about it, still be a part of it. But I wouldn't have wanted to give up broadcasting in my 30s or 40s. It's too soon. Ray, we're just getting started. We got a long way to go here.
Yeah, like I said, I was very fortunate to get the job at Fox. Chris, I had last night I got my itinerary because I leave tomorrow morning. I wasn't in first class. I said to my, oh no, that's how jaded I got. No, Mike, I've gotten jaded. I told my wife, I said, I can't believe this. She said, what? I said, I'm not in first class. So I actually texted our lovely Emily. She said, I went and checked it again. Oh, they changed it. She goes, I knew what you were calling about.
Thank goodness.
I said, man, you get jaded. You get jaded, Chris, you know better
right.
than me.
We get spoiled.
We get spoiled.
You would have, but before we'd have been just happy to be on the plane.
You ain't lying. No, I can't fly coach no more. Can't do it. Can't do it, Sally. Can't do it.
Hey, how long do you want to do it, Chris? I mean, there is some. It's a little bit of a grind, and people don't get it.
Yeah, you're on the road a lot, man. You're on the road a lot. Chris.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, that's the hard part. But I like doing. The football season is one because you're traveling every weekend. I'll be calling the Rams defending NFC champs at Carolina week 1. I have the Packers Vikings week 2. I'm calling the Browns week 6 against Seattle and Cleveland.
Yeah, buddy.
We'll be there.
I'll be there.
We hope to see Ray. But I think So, and then baseball with Fox at FS1. I get to do some of the studio. There's some travel with boxing. The NASCAR, the dog show are more like singular events. The Daytona 500, the Westminster Kennel Club show, dog show in New York. So it's spaced out enough, and I enjoy it enough. I guess travel over time, I would slow some of that down. But that's what. And you look at the business, my guys. Look at Vince Scully into his 80s. Right. We have Dick Stockton, and he's almost 80. Al Michaels is 70, 5 or 6. I mean, still going strong. So if you're enjoying what you're doing and people like it, then keep doing it. If that's what you want. I mean, retirement for me, I find time in between working. A lot of what I would be watching anyway is sporting events, going to sporting events. I'd be doing that as a fan if I was retired.
When you talk to entertainers, they'd say, what am I, like you said, Chris, what am I retiring for? What am I retiring to? And they're always on the road, and you go, you're still on the road. I go, hey, you got to pay the rent. I always did love that. Red buttons.
Right.
I got good friends with red buttons.
Yeah.
And I said, Red, what do you got this weekend? Young man, just paying the rent. Young man, just paying the rent.
You don't hear a lot of red buttons references.
No, man. Could have had a dinner. Because my man, Chris Mars, could have had a dinner.
Never got a dinner.
One
of his, you're right. We're going way back. Red Buttons he's a king, was it Henry VIII, who said to his divorce lawyer, wait, never mind divorce. I got another idea. Never got a dinner. Those are the kind of, those are the Red Buttons jokes.
That's it.
That Ray likes.
Yes.
He loves the old school humor.
Oh, man. It was the red.
Do you,
anyway, all right, well.
Let me last question, then you got to go, okay? Do you, are broadcasters like athletes? Can you not pick the best of broadcasters, or do you have one that you really put above the others?
Well, no, that's an interesting question because I think there's so many styles, and it's kind of like what Ray was saying about the greatest athlete, because you go through eras of guys. There's the baseball style, there's the football sound. Growing up, I really watched and listened and admired all of them that were on network TV. Then I get to work with some of them. But I'll tell you who I'm more a fan of and who shaped, I think, if you want to call it a style or just my approach to broadcasting. I was the late night hosting of Johnny Carson, and that was a guy who I loved because he could interview a big star, or he could interview the woman from Georgia with the potato chips, or a 5-year-old kid with a hula hoop, and this is long before Leno or Kimmel and there's a talented group of young hosts, late night hosts that are very entertaining. But Carson was a very underrated interviewer, like Howard Stern, who's a very good interviewer. He just made people feel comfortable so that they revealed who they were. And so that's in terms of my approach. I kind of use his Midwest style to reach a wide audience, and applied that to covering sports, whether I was in New York or LA or Connecticut or in the South. And that kind of, it's not down home, but just person to person kind of approach with people, whether they're doing an interview after a loss or before a big game. So that was kind of, Johnny Carson, was kind of my idol guy that I wanted to be like. And then there's some, some entertainers that you've watched growing up. And
do the Carson. Ray says you do a Carson.
I did not know that.
Do it.
No, no, true story. I don't really do it, but remember,
yes,
ESPN,
you do.
Late night, a little bit, but late night Sports Center. We think about this in the 90s, right? Mike Tirico and I are doing the late 2 a.m. Sports Center, and we would, at the end of the show, there'd be time to stretch, and so Mike would throw out a fact, a nugget. And I would, hey, this is the NCAA, and I would say, I did not know that. That's weird, wild stuff, kind of like Johnny. So they said, why don't we call the segment, let's call it something like, I did not know that. I said, well, how about just did you know? And it became a staple there for a lot of years on SportsCenter. Yeah, so true story. I leave the Connecticut to come to Los Angeles to do Up Close. And I'm at the UCLA Tennis Center, the event that they held there, the Mercedes-Benz Open, and I see over in the VIP thing, and I'm there. It's Johnny Carson. He's retired, but I see him, and I think this is my one chance. This is the guy. So I kind of walk through, and I wait till you don't want to interrupt. I mean, this is my idol guy. So I just step up and I said, hey, Mr. Carson. I said, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Chris Myers from ESPN. He said, I know who you are. And I said, I just wanted you to know that the late night Sports Center segment that we use, I said, I've enjoyed watching you over the years, that we call it Did You Know, because of the way you would talk when somebody would say something on your show. And he said, all he did was he said, I did not know that. And he shook my hand and walked away. True story. And that was it.
I did not
True
know
story.
You didn't do the interview or the imitation of him to him?
Oh, you do
no.
that.
There were two. I think Rich Little, another one of Ray's pals, would do that. That was not me. But he was my guy. Still is. I wish Jimmy Fallon is a very talented entertainer. But there was only one. Talk about the greatest of all time, right? There's the king of late night.
Okay.
Nobody. And I know there was people before him, but yeah, he was it. He's the gold standard.
Right. You're absolutely right. There's the gold standard.
Hey, will you come back and be on the program again?
Absolutely. This was fun. I felt like we were just hanging out talking, which I guess is what you should do.
Well, Chris, you know what? I'm glad you said it, because I wanted to have a show where it's like we're letting the audience kind of eavesdrop on our conversation. If we were sitting at a restaurant, I want the audience to think that they're kind of listening in on our conversation, eavesdropping.
Yeah, and I want to tell Mike too. Mike, it's the same thing when we do a broadcast. Ray's doing all the talking. You got to fight to get in there. So
I know.
That's your fighting.
I know.
hey, but I'm interesting.
Honestly,
but I'm interesting. You guys ain't. You guys ain't.
Too.
Here's what sucks for you. I have your phone number now. I'll be texting you while he's doing his stupid rants. All right.
There you go.
And modest. That's the word.
Hey, is there any way people can follow you on like Twitter or Instagram or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. Chris Myers, Myers. Chris Myers Fox is the Instagram, and for Twitter, I got there a little late. Somebody used, but so it's the like TH.
Yeah.
And then underscore the Chris Myers, CHRS MYERS, because on Twitter, and I'm not as active as I should be. We're trying to help Ray with social media. He hits a button, something goes wrong, but we'll work with him on the phone. It'll be good. All right.
Hey, good luck on
football. Thank you so much, man. I can't thank you. I've been blessed. I'll see you soon, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, I'll see you soon. Okay. Look forward to it next time. Take
Chris,
care.
Real fast, Chris. Are you doing the Rams game at the end of
yes.
At the end of September?
Yeah. Yes, I'm doing that. Yeah, the home game after the
day after
the Porter Spence fight.
I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay in because I'm going to stay over and come to that game.
All right, come out. Yeah, the Rams are playing the Buccaneers. Tampa Bay at the Coliseum.
Right.
Come over and say, bring Mike with you. Come out.
Now we're talking.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Chris.
See you later.
Take care.
Right.
Bye. Oh my God. That's.
Was that not the best?
He's the best. I'm telling you, man.
He's got 1,000 more stories.
He does, absolutely. And if you look on, if you go to Wikipedia and look him up, and he's had the first interview, with him, and he was there during we talked the earthquake, and he was there during the 1996 bombing of the Olympic. I mean, he's done so many big events, sports events, and I call him again, the Forrest Gump of because he's been everywhere.
People don't understand how versatile you have to be to do football, baseball, basketball, dog show, darts, horse racing, NASCAR, because we grew up in one part of the country. We don't know anything about hockey. We don't watch hockey.
I didn't grow up with hockey. No,
we didn't
did
grow
not.
up with
You're
NASCAR.
absolutely right. I
We
learned
can't
about
talk
hockey when first
NASCAR.
when it's Pittsburgh had it.
But these guys can do it,
Do it all.
and they sound like they know what the hell they're talking about. It's so hard to do.
But to be last as long as Chris has, and people like that, they are top pros in their game, and it's why they get paid the big bucks, and they deserve it because he's on the road so many months of the year. He's on the road for the next 16, 17, 18 weeks, whatever it is. Well, the playoffs and the they're doing preseason, regular season, playoffs, and Super Bowl. I mean, his wife has got to be just a great, great lady. His children got to understand that. He's gone half the week.
And to do a game takes one talent. To do a studio show where you're in charge, but you got to bring in these other guys in and ping pong off that guy and look into that camera and look ping pong off that guy. And wait a minute, we're going to hold format here for a second because he's got really something good to say.
Right.
That is a talent that people don't get. It's really hard to do.
You know what I got from him, Mike, and I did it with you earlier. Chris talked. He said, "Ray, when we talk, he says, I'm gonna talk, and I'm just gonna point. When you have if it lags a little bit, I'm gonna make a point, and then I'll point to you. Or if you got something to say, you point to me, and then I'll bub it. So Chris was talking to me, going, okay, Ray, Mike, it'd be point whoever, because we have an extra fighter with us, and so we always. And he's great, and if I'd say. Or I point and he said, okay. And that's what I was doing to you. I said, Mike, I was pointing to you because Chris Darby, just, it's a language, man. You just let us know, man. And it's, so you don't want to step on anybody's toes. And it's a rhythm, and it's like, when it's good, man, it's great to have that, when you got three guys putting out stuff there, and it's like a dance almost,
Right.
what I mean?
And then you guys
Everyone's
can
got
just be yourself.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about the
he was the
cues
best.
and the producer in your ear and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, he'd
You
cut
just-
jokes. And one thing he always say, I hope you. I said, Chris, I don't. First of all, understand. I don't get offended. I'm hard to offend me, and I really don't. And I'm gonna bust your chops. So trust me. So okay, and that's why we had so much fun together. And I'm gonna miss him, man. I really become fond. Over the last year, we've become good friends, and we got 3 more years to go after this, and God willing, many more. But working with him was so much fun. So, anyhow,
Is the boxing season coming to an end?
no.
He's going to go.
There's no season. It's 20.
keep going.
Keep
Okay.
going. We got 26 shows this year. We're only halfway through.
Okay.
And then we start again in January. So
Okay.
I mean, it's 4 years for next. And I'm gonna.
So he's going to go up. He's going to do his football thing.
Right,
And then you're going to have
at
a
the
new.
end of football, and they got the Super Bowl.
Okay.
And from my understanding, and Chris, in case you didn't know, but I obviously knew, that Fox has the Super Bowl, and we're going to be doing a fight. From my understanding, we're going to be doing a fight down in Miami the week before the Super Bowl.
That's great.
Not the week. I said, what about the Saturday? No, too many events.
Yeah.
The weekend before the Super Bowl. Perfect.
You better stick around.
They said you want to stick around, you want to come back.
You must.
We'll come back. I'm just excited. I'm so very fortunate to work with Fox, man. I'm really enjoying this, man. It's been a wonderful, 6, 7 months, 8 months, whatever it is, and 9 months. No, 9 months now.
9 months. Your
yes.
third trimester.
Wow.
That's you.
Yeah. But anyhow, I can't. I hope you enjoyed the show today. I had so much fun.
Me
Mike,
too. It was a thrill for me.
And I appreciate it. And we'll get him back. Chris will come back, and I'll try to get Kenny Albert on. Kenny's another one who works with us, and Kenny's a great guy.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, Kenny's great.
Now he's Marv's brother.
Marv,
Cousin?
son. Marv's son.
He is?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
No.
that. Oh,
Kenny's
that'd
Marv's
be
son.
awesome.
Yeah.
He does
So-
some Browns games. He slides
Yes.
in there. You never know
Kenny's
where he's
great,
going to
great.
pop up.
And Kenny's, his Steve, his Uncle Steve, and his Uncle Al. They're all, broadcasters, and so he comes from that pedigree, and he's one of the best. So
Before we go, we should thank another Ken.
yes,
Ken Hyderis.
Ken Hyderis.
From the Sunrise Inn, Sunrise Pizza, for helping to put this broadcast
yes.
on.
Thank you
and
for
sponsoring
Ken.
it.
I appreciate your help. Your
Been a long
support.
time coming.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks.
It's if you like Sunrise, it's a staple
Ah,
here in downtown.
they have a deep dish.
Warren, their pieces.
You
is
think you're
well
in
known.
downtown
But
Chicago.
now talk about that. Something I want to talk about. One of the segments I want to start doing is, I was doing on my radio show before, is hidden secrets, hidden gems.
Okay.
I got one. I've talked about it before. I'm going to talk about it again. Over there in Canfield on Route 224 between Raccoon Road and Route 11, Dave's Cosmic Subs.
Oh yeah, they got one in
It's
Hudson.
on the south side. It's on the south. No. The closest one's in Cleveland.
No, they got one in Hudson. They've had one.
Oh,
for
Hudson. I'm
years.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm
But
sorry.
it's phenomenal.
No, that's what I'm talking about.
Phenomenal.
And yeah, Hudson. Yes, and it was started in Chagrin Falls.
Right.
As my wife says, Chagrin Falls. Yeah, that's where the owner. And so,
You like it there?
it's delicious. People, it's a hidden secret. Believe me, whenever I travel, I always look for to go places. I want. I've been very fortunate. We get to sit at restaurants and be with the Fox people. We eat well. But a lot of times when you go on, when you just arrive from the airport or going to the airport, catch a plane, you're always looking for the best fast food, freshest food, and one that's got a reputation. And you ask people, local people, what's the place? I'm telling you, this is the place. Dave's Cosmic Subs on 224 in Canfield, between Route 11 and right across from
Yeah, it's on the south side.
from the
the
south side
street.
street, across from Route 11. There's the gas station. What's the name of the gas station?
Right on the corner there by something new, Starbucks. Is it new?
Sheets
Yeah.
gas station. Sheets gas station. There's a little plaza. You have Goussain's, Mediterranean food, and then Dave's Cosmic Subs. Let me tell you, the sauce. There's Dave. I met Dave. He was in a '60s band from Chagrin Falls. He's in a '60s band. The key is their special sauce. He said it's all about the herbs. I said, oh yeah, a lot of herbs in that sauce,
especially in the
A lot
60s.
of herbs, baby. But it's off the hook.
What do you get? What, do you get the same thing every time?
I get the turkey sub, but yeah, they got some. I get
So boring.
They got the turkey, the shaved turkey. It's delicious, but homemade cut fries. Look, if you want, it's the best fast food for me in the area. It's delicious. It's fresh. Everything's fresh. There's no pre-made. You go in, you order it, boom. The service is wonderful. Just go. Dave's Cosmic Subs, Canfield, cross from the Route 11, next to the Sheets. Believe me, you will not be disappointed. And I'm going to say this because I'm going to make this up. Can I make this up?
You lay it on me.
If you go in there and say,
Oh, here we go.
hey, give me the Boom Boom Special, you get 10% off your thing.
Oh.
And I'm going to tell them, because I just made this up. So I'm going to tell them this. I'm going to tell you ask, hey, look, give me the Boom Boom Special, you get 10% off your ticket. They got it.
Why wouldn't they do it?
They
have
got to
to do
accept
it
it
now.
now because
Now they gotta do it.
you can't buy this type of advertising.
No.
But I'm telling you, for that type of food, the food is off the hook. It's the best subs. The bread is terrific. The sauce, they do a great job there, man. Lovely, warm, lovely people. You go in, the vibe, man. It's that '60s vibe. It's all that rock and roll stuff. And there's a Sammy Hagar guitar that
Your
I
buddy.
allowed them to use.
Really?
It was Sammy gave it
your
to me.
guitar?
It's the guitar he wrote to me. He gave it to me, and I gave it to them to put up there.
Well, that's
Because that's that
fantastic.
whole vibe. And I told them about my '60s. I asked if they could put it. I said, well, it's better been sitting underneath my bed.
That's right.
In the case. So they got it there.
good for you.
Yeah. Anyhow, Dave's Cosmic Subs, 224 in Canfield. Okay.
All right.
Again,
show.
thanks for Avalon Inn, Sunrise, Canadaris, the Sunrise
Inn.
Sunrise Inn, the Warren, the restaurant, the food, the pizza. It's the best. It's the best assist. Anyhow, until next time, Mike. We'll be back next Tuesday around the same time.
Yeah. I got a good guest for you next week.
Great. We got a new guest. We got a great.
Good guest. for you.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. If you like the show, tell your friends. We're on every week Tuesday at 1:30. If it changes sometimes a little later, you'll see it on social media. But until next time, take care of each other, love each other. Good night, and God bless.